welcome to Hardcover Feedback. I'm Tracey Hill. This is my special guest, Jen Billingsley, and we are reading The Initiates by Etienne Davodeau. Etienne Davodeau is a comic artist. Richard Leroy is a winemaker. Neither one knows much about each other's worlds, but they make an agreement to learn. For over a year, the two friends explore each other's jobs. Etienne goes to work in Richard's vineyard, and Richard discovers comics and publishing. As they get into each other's professions, they see how their work shapes their lives.
Hey, come on, it's no joke. Don't you feel the wind? We're in the heart of the Southwest down here. We get wind and sun all year long. Montpigneau is an impeccably ventilated terroir. My vineyard's always fine here, even in the full sunlight. In the summer, it beats down on these rocks, you know. Why are you looking at me like that? What I see that intrigues me and what I'm seeking to understand is what connects this guy to his vineyard. It's much more than the story of some surveyed parcel and its owner. In Richard's eyes, Montpigneau is a living, complex entity of which he's the attentive companion and demanding partner. What I see is the singular fusion between an individual and a lump of windswept rock.
So, what a strange thing what a deal to make with a friend. To say, and the artist initiated it. Etienne says, hey, want to swap some understanding of our jobs? You want to learn about mine, I learn about yours? And Richard just says, sure, let's do that. And they go over a year doing this. And it seemed they got pretty deep into everything.
That he was so on board with the entire process that each of them were on board with each other's processes for the working of the vineyard for the whole cycle of all of the seasons.
Yeah.
And then also getting really into the cycle of the publishing industry. They paralleled. It was really interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. I appreciate that they stuck with each other. That was something, because either one of them could have said, forget it, and just walked away after a while.
For me. I hate you.
And it really seemed to play out like a documentary. It read like a really good documentary. Mm-hmm. It read in such a way that, there wasn't some major plot to go on. It's like we kind of know where this is going to go, but it's where their different experiences take each of them and what sort of understanding they develop of each other's professions. And frankly, I think that the artist ended up getting a much deeper, more hands-on picture of running a vineyard than the winemaker did in being an artist, because the winemaker wasn't even acquainted with comics. Mm-hmm. He had assignments where he had to read a bunch, and that's where you start. You just have to read a whole lot. So I don't think it was quite balanced in that respect.
Well, because there wasn't that hands-on element that he got to experience being on the side of the artist, experiencing the vineyard was like getting your hands in the earth and being out in the sun and walking the fields.
And tasting wines, or going through the experience of actually pressing the wine and the
barrels. There was so much about barrels.
That was amazing. I learned so much about the whole process of winemaking, and actually did learn quite a bit about comic publishing as well, but not so much about actually putting a comic together.
Specifically in France, because that's where it's like the French comic industry, which is very different from the American comics industry because of its focus on journalism, or not focus, but they definitely accept journalism in comics as being an acceptable.
Right, it's a bigger genre over there, and so. I should have mentioned that they are French. This was actually originally published in French. It's a really good translation.
It is a great translation.
English, it's like seamless. Everything was very lyrical, and the writing is really good.
And you definitely get their personalities from each of the different parts of the dialogue.
Yes.
They're very separate, which I think is hard to do. I'm so impressed with as from a translation standpoint. So.
Yeah, good point. But the art as well really conveys so much. I think having the visuals of the vineyards, and really even having the visuals like of the wineries and of the
machines.
the machines for the publishing was
Yeah.
just great to have, because you do lose something if it's all just printed out. And how long would it take to just explain in prose all of these things that they managed to accomplish with pictures?
Yeah, and I don't.
So-
I'm wondering if that's what triggered that, because we both compared it to a documentary almost immediately.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm wondering if the visual component of it really is what pulled that out of us. Because if you're reading a nonfiction, even if it's journalism, if you're reading a book, you're reading it in a different way than you are if you're looking at the pictures and getting to see the people and their atmosphere.
Yeah, I think there's more immersion with having that visual.
Yeah.
So the pictures actually help bring you further in, and it doesn't take as long. It's a more immediate connection to what's being explained in the
Yeah.
work. So and that said, it took me a long time to read it.
Such a long time.
It's pretty detailed. It's long for a graphic novel. Would you say it's kind of long?
It's very long for a graphic novel with one specifically that doesn't have multiple storylines in it. There isn't
Yeah.
really a storyline at all. You're not reading
No,
narrative fiction. It doesn't have like little arcs. It's just
unbroken, one unbroken process all the way through. Like, and that might be what exhausted me every now and
Yeah.
then while reading it. Like, this is great. I have to put it down for
Yeah.
a while. I got to look at something else for a while. So it took longer to read than it would something that did have story breaks, smaller arcs, and
It felt like a year. Like you were really with them for a year, and by
did.
the end of it, you're just like, okay, I'm interested, but whew.
yeah, it was a good year. Not an easy one to read through. So that said, solid work. I enjoyed it. I give it 3 stars.
And I gave it 2.5 because it just took so long for me to get through it.
Yeah. This has been Hardcover Feedback. We'll see you next time.